Welcome to the Special Public Works Infrastructure Committee meeting. We have two items on the agenda. The first one will take less than 15 seconds. We have the minutes of the May 2021 meeting. And before we do that, let me just do some quick introductions. Neil Dobler, District 7. I have with me online Councilman Emerson from District 4 and Councilman Lesser from District 9. Also joining us this morning is Deputy Mayor Padilla. So welcome. Would look for a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. All right, let us move on to our discussion item. I think as everybody remembers, at the last meeting, we entered into a continuing discussion of the fleet management program, talking specifically about leasing. And we've asked Public Works to expand on that in this special meeting. So I'm just going to turn it over to the Public Works Director,
Sure.
Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chief Staff, do you have anything that you'd like to say before I open my comments?
Yeah, just a couple things. One of the things that we were tasked with was to look into whether a leasing program was a viable option for the city of Topeka. There was no mandate to do so, and so this was a program that we're looking at to see how that would work into our current fleet situation, the status of our current fleet, and the aging fleet that we have. And so what we're here to do today is talk about where we want to take the program actually. And one of the things that Councilman Duncan asked, what was our recommendation? And if you remember at last meeting, we had a couple things that we needed to look at and work out, and so we've done a lot of research. We have Hannah Ulrich, who's done a lot of work on that, as well as Mr. Jackson on where this program could go and what the benefits could be for the city of Topeka. And our overall arching recommendation would be a cash-funded program. We know how finances are. You have all the numbers that were presented to everybody, about a month ago. Those numbers haven't really changed, but again, a cash program is preferable because it puts us in a much better situation down the road. But with that, we know that that's not always going to be feasible and sustainable. And so looking at a lease program, how that fits in, the modifications, scalable size and all that. And so really today our recommendation is to put forth that we would recommend approval to do a lease program. What that actually looks like is still being worked on because we have several very viable options. And we've been working closely with the city manager on that, keeping him abreast of what those options look like. And we have, his intent on where the program should go. And so we feel very confident that we would recommend a lease program on a scalable size. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Jackson. And we can answer any questions that you got. One more thing I forgot. I know Mr. Councilman Lester had asked us to look into other leasing options. Some were specifically mentioned. We have done that, and Hannah has that. We have that information, and Hannah has the research on that too. So basically, we can answer any question that you're ready to throw at us. And Mr. Jackson, this is yours.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cochran. And further to that, Mr. Chair, as Mr. Cochran has pointed or shared with the group here, the options were limited for us. And I want to first start out by giving a public apology to Mrs. Ulrich. When I came into the meeting last time, I did not want to move into that without having given it more review. That's what I should have asked you all for. I should have asked you for an opportunity to pull it so that I could go back and review the information. Because after having done so, what I have arrived at is what she and her team have done over this last 18 months has been a very exhaustive study. They have given us quite possibly the best product that we can get right now, given the circumstances and the conditions of our fleet. And as I shared with you before the meeting opened, I think this will probably be a model going forward for cities our size and larger, and it gets my full recommendation for us to move forward with the scope that they presented.
Very good, thank you.
Is that your way of saying you're back on the Christmas card list?
Okay, Councilman Lesser, yeah, I think so.
Maybe in 2022. All right. Any other presentations? I would appreciate, I know we had an email talking about the other lease opportunities, and I had just a quick chance to scan through there. Would you mind just kind of walking back through? You checked with local companies. You also had information on the state process that kind of helps outline where enterprise falls in all this. So if you wouldn't mind just 5 minutes kind of going through that, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So in partnership with Contracts and Procurement, and Leah's on here so that she can speak to some of that too, we selected essentially a random sampling of both local and national companies that offer lease programs to determine whether or not the type of programs they offer were viable, if they were comparative to the enterprise solution, and looking at those in terms of the need to go forward with an RFP or being able to piggyback off of the Sourcewell contract. Sourcewell is a very well-known and highly utilized purchasing co-op that the city has taken advantage of or is looked to take advantage of in other ways, and is a competitively bid process that is in line with our procurement policies. But to ensure that we were getting the best deal and that we didn't want to limit ourselves, we did go ahead and take a random sampling. Contracts helped pick that so that I could be completely removed from it in terms of identifying the vendors to look at. In the conversations with them, we had one who honestly just told us that they did not provide that type of program for what we would look for. So we did not interview them out of the list. The others that were on the list had the set questions that we walked through with each of them, scoping from the type of programs they offer to the experience they have with municipal governments and or public entities, and the fleet and make of our light comparison. In doing so, we found that none of the competitors that we called had the program that was scaled similarly to enterprises, with the endpoint being a resale value back to us. So they offer trade-in value, which, as we all know, trade-in value is significantly less than the public resale on any used car. So while it provided an option in terms of a more standard lease program, it was not tailored in the same model that Enterprise was. A number of the vendors that we contacted as well, whether it be local or national, had limited exposure with public entities, and especially ones that could range up to our size of our light duty fleet. So in discussing with them and reviewing with Leah afterwards, we determined that it was not necessary to move forward with an RFP at this time. Instead, we would piggyback off of the Sourcewell agreement that had been competitively bid. The companies that were essentially considered for that or put in for it were listed as well as the overall evaluation form, and we can provide more documentation if needed to support their decision from a Sourcewell perspective to go with Enterprise. With that process, it is one where we are able to take advantage of their pricing and the scaled model and do so in a way that would not require us to go through that additional process internally, which does save our resources and helps expedite the program in terms of us being able to move forward if that is so choice by the governing body and our leadership.
Very good, thank you. Questions from the rest of the committee? Councilman Emerson?
I have none right now, Chair. Thank you.
Councilman Lesser?
None at this time.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Padilla? Apparently none. Thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't come off mute. Thank you for asking.
You bet. All right, so outline the steps from here, if you would. Number one is, what's the time frame look like if we move forward with this? Assume you would bring an action back to the committee for recommendation, not approval. And then does this go in front of, does this need rephrase that, does this require council action, council approval?
Well, Mr. Chair, it was my understanding that we were going to actually either make a recommendation this morning or one way or the other. And as I stated, my recommendation is in full support, and we're asking for the recommendation from the committee. I don't know what the process is going forward for this going before the full body.
Councilman Dober, my recommendation, and also to the city manager, would be we are basically ready to start putting the program together. Ms. Ulrich has done a lot of work and got it to the position where we can actually act on it when we're ready. And I think that's what we're asking for, is that you say, yeah, go ahead and act on it. And then what we're going to do is, before we put it, finalize and all that, we are going to have to look at the number of vehicles we want to lease. I know that Ms. Ulrich has put together the pricing from 25 vehicles all the way up to 100 vehicles. And so what Mr. Jackson and Ms. Ulrich will do is they will look at our fleet and say exactly how many vehicles that we want to start with. We want to do a very manageable size of vehicles initially to see how successful the program is. And then after a year, and we evaluate it and we say, hey, this is great, then we can either expand it or make a decision on what to do at that point. So what we're asking for is really, hey, yeah, go ahead and move forward with the lease option, and then what we'll do is we'll put one together, bring it back to the committee, and then the committee can approve that or disapprove that, and then if they approve it, move it to the full body for review. And so when you ask for a timeline, I would say probably by September, we would have a very viable plan in place that we would be bringing to the committee.
So this would start in 2022, is that the goal?
Yes, as we all know, the new car market is a little challenging. So we would reach back out to Enterprise with the approval of our governing body committee to get new pricing, because the models that we have are based off of 2021 model year.
Right.
And so they'll need to go back out and understand the timing of which they can receive the vehicles and what the pricing associated with them is. It should be very doable from our side by September.
Okay.
It'll just be contingent on what timeline they need to purchase it, but likely you will not receive them until late fall, when the new models are released, or early 2022.
Okay.
And on top of that recommendation, sir, I think we're looking to 25 to 50 vehicles is what we think would be a sizable.
That's the recommendation,
Yes.
somewhere between 25 and 50. Okay, let me just recap, because I don't want to make a move similar to what we did a few weeks ago with the sidewalk program and then get blasted for not taking it to the full council. So I don't believe this action actually requires council approval, but I certainly think we're going to make a decision here to recommend moving forward or not. We'll see where that goes in a minute here. If we do move forward, you're bringing a full-blown process back to us sometime in September. If that moves forward out of this committee, I think what we would ask is a presentation to the full council.
Yeah.
Unless it does require.
Well, I think for me, I would prefer to go before the governing body for a vote, from the standpoint of this is quite a departure from what we've done in the past.
Okay.
And I think that it makes sense that to show the support to the decision that we're making. Normally this is a budget item. You're putting this into the budget and governing body is approving the budget to purchase vehicles. Well, we're talking about a lease, but it really is kind of the same thing because they're committing to a cost that we're going to have out of the city's budget. And so I think this fits well with going ahead and having a governing body make a decision. It may not be to the letter of the law related to, it may be within my authority to do, but I think it's a policy change from what we've done in the past as it relates to the budget. And I think it's best to go ahead and make sure we have that full support of the governing body to make that move.
very good. I agree with that. So it'd be a resolution that would
Yes.
come in front of the governing body. All right. So I think where we are right now is a vote from this committee on the recommendation to move into a full-scale proposal. I would look for a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to move ahead with the proposal for leasing from Enterprise. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. There you have it.
All right, thank you.
And I believe, is there any other issues to bring in front of the committee?
Not at this time.
Fantastic. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.